What's going on, y'all? Today we are going to be talking about why Kevin Hart's Say It With Your Chest is some of the best vocal advice that you could ever receive. But what we're going to focus on is how that could likely be misinterpreted. And then if it's misinterpreted, is going to backfire. And what's actually happening that makes saying it with your chest so effective. So this comes from one of Kevin Hart's specials. Very funny. And it happens when he is telling a story of seeing his uncle for the first time, who has been institutionalized. The guy's been in prison for 15 years. And Kevin Hart is saying, Kevin Hart, it's one of those names where if I were to say Kevin, it'd be weird, you know? So what Kevin Hart is saying is everything that he says sounds, even the threats that he says, they sound like they leave you in suspense. And the way that he communicates is so jarring. And he gives this example saying, I was really excited to see him. I was saying, hey, Uncle Richie, what's up, man? It's been a long time. I'm making good money now. I'm excited to see you. And he says, say it with your chest. And what that sounds like, right, is there's a couple of things in there. One, it sounds like he's just yelling, like he's just being louder. And that what he means is like he's angry. So if you interpret saying it with your chest as you just trying to be louder and you being kind of angry, that's going to backfire. Even if you are angry and you're just trying to be louder, that's going to backfire. And let's explain why. So what happens is most people, when they are speaking, I like to think of the voice as gears in an engine. First gear, second gear, etc. One of the reasons that I enjoy singing opera rep is because it allows me to go into sixth gear. It's a gear of my voice that I can use that most people can't. And it's like taking a Lamborghini and flooring it on the Autobahn. What I imagine flooring it on the Autobahn is like. You just get to let it rip. Now, as this applies to speaking voice and in non-racetrack or non-Autobahn situations, right? Everybody effectively has that Lamborghini gear, though maybe not everybody has a Lamborghini. But if we can be speaking in that gear that allows us to really let it rip, then that means that when we do get louder, we are not going to blow our voice out and we are still going to be maximally expressive, and we can stay in that higher volume for longer. And we can do it again tomorrow and the day after that and the day after that. So when most people speak or try to be louder, they're trying to hit that speed from like first gear. It doesn't work because they're not used to using their voice in this optimal way. So that doesn't mean that you need to be always singing or something ridiculous like that, right? But what we want to do is speak the way we sing and ideally sing the way we speak. But most people, singers, actors, performers included, don't come into their training speaking correctly. So the speaking has to get retrained. So as this applies to the layperson, you're not a singer, you might not be an actor, you are a sales rep, you are an executive, you are a content creator, you are a person who just wants to speak with their most freed up, unleashed voice and be heard and communicate effectively. How do you say it with your chest? Okay. What you don't do is you don't think about, I'm going to yell, I'm going to be louder, because then you're trying to go to sixth gear speed from first gear. That's going to blow your engine out. What you have to do is understand what's actually happening that makes Say It With Your Chest so effective. So what's happening when he gives that example of say it with your chest, what he's really doing is he is accessing more of his chest resonance. Accessing chest resonance is what you can think of it like in your speaker system in your car. It's the bass. We want to have that bass in the sound. We don't want it to overwhelm the sound because then it distorts everything. And then if you get too loud, you blow it out. But we want to have that bass there because it gives color and richness. And it does make things sound louder, but not because we turned the volume up, just because we turned the bass up. So chest resonance is a foundational part of the technique for professional opera singers and for professional actors, because what it lays the foundation for is the acoustic phenomenon that is the singer's formant, which is what allows for the unamplified human voice to cut over an orchestra into the back of a multi-thousand seat house with all of the colors and dynamics that's basically loud and soft, expressing anger or expressing tender sentiment. No microphone needed, night after night, without damaging the voice. So that doesn't mean that we are speaking or singing 100% in chest resonance. I always liken this to understanding your hormone levels, right? I'm a bit of a meathead, and I'm a lifetime natty. I'm a natural. But that doesn't mean that I have not looked deeply into going to the dark side. And it's a common thing, at least maybe for men, where you're like, if I can just max this thing out and have 0% of this other thing, then I'm going to get exactly what I want. In this case, it would be like, let me just have maximum testosterone as high as I could possibly go and crush my estrogen. Okay, well, that is a disastrous idea, that's one of the things that I found on these forums and in my research is you got to have balance. And so just like we want to have optimal levels of testosterone and estrogen, whether we are natty or not natty, we also want to have proper balance of chest voice or chest resonance and also head resonance and pharyngeal resonance. So we don't want to be speaking exclusively in chest voice, but for many people, identifying and becoming more aware of their chest resonance gets them a whole lot of the results that they are looking for. Say with men, for example, there's a very common, and this is actually how tonality training was started, helping men have a deeper, more commanding voice without sounding like they're trying too hard. What happens is dudes will drop their voice, they'll drop the pitch of their voice well out of the authentic range that their instrument, their body, is built for. So they'll basically go like this. Hey, what's up? Now, I know dudes who have a voice that is at that pitch, and it's natural and it's cool. Like, it's always going to be a sick pitch, right, to talk at. But it works because you look at them and everything about them and the rest of their voice, it all matches. This is like getting the leg lengthening surgery. I am proudly 6 foot, like a couple of millimeters over. So if I were to do that crazy thing where I have my legs surgically broken and then I add 3 or 4 inches, great, I would be 6'3" or 4, but the rest of my body is going to look just a little bit out of proportion. It's not going to look authentic because that's not the way that I was built. So instead of shoving the pitch down here and talking like this, we've got to think about what are the effects that we're hoping to achieve from that. What we're hoping is to get this deeper, which deeper is not something objective and measurable like pitch, which is measured in hertz, speed of vibration. It's an effect. It's a color. It's a, when you hear it. We're looking for that in this sort of depth, that bass quality that comes with it. Now, the pitch, when you start to speak with more chest voice, is going to drop a little bit. But it's not going to drop out of that authentic range. It's going to drop, and that color, the effects that you're hoping to achieve, are going to come in there. So when you speak with more chest voice, when you wake it up and activate it, then you get more of that commanding masculine sound with all of the effects that you're hoping that are going to go with it without dropping your voice down here. So when Kevin's uncle says, say it with your chest, and we hear in Kevin's example a lot more chest resonance, yes, his pitch lowers, but there, if you listen in closely or with some good headphones or speakers, you can hear the colors of his voice, the effects in his voice change. There is more depth and boom there. And that's not because the pitch is lowered? It's because he's speaking with more chest resonance. One of the ways that I like to initially cue in awareness to chest resonance for clients is I just have them put their hand on their chest underneath their shirt, and they just say whatever it is that they're normally saying, and all they're going to do is just bring their awareness into their body and become aware of what's vibrating and what's not vibrating. So maybe when they first start speaking, they feel vibrations happening somewhere in their face or somewhere in their throat, and that's normal because your voice is only coming from one place. It's only coming from the larynx and the vocal folds slamming together. So that is actually what's vibrating. But so much of the voice, and this is skill 3 in the 7 skills of tonality: resonance, articulation, imagination, because the voice is not something like, it's not an instrument like a piano or a trumpet where we can just press a button, move air, and we get the same reliable, repeatable sound every time. We have to bring our imagination into what's happening so that we can cue in the desired result whenever we want. So what we do is we put the hand on the chest, and then we're talking, and we're like, oh, maybe my voice is vibrating up here a little bit. It's it's in my face, or maybe it's in my larynx. And then we just keep on talking, and we see, okay, now what do I have to do in order to make 100%, for the sake of the exercise, 100% of the vibrations that I'm experiencing be coming through my hand? Because if they're coming through my hand, that's here on my chest. That means feeling it vibrating in my chest. Okay, now if we listen to what's just happened there, yes, my pitch has lowered a little bit, but I got a great microphone. So you tell me, what colors, what effects, what did you notice change in my voice when I start speaking with way more chest resonance? Like I said, there needs to be balance. And so this is not where I normally speak. Where I normally speak is right about here, which is a balance of chest voice and head voice. I like to think about it as like 60% head, 40% chest. And what this allows for you to do when you constantly stay in this gear is it allows for you to floor it and to be totally spontaneous and thus authentic in your voice in any direction. It's like you want to stay ready rather than get ready. I don't know if that matches up exactly. Like, you're not going to be driving around in 6th gear all of the time ready to floor it. Like, you build up to 6th gear. But nevertheless, not a mechanic and have yet to rip such a vehicle on the Autobahn. But what we want to do is understand our voice and keep it in that place. This is what I call finding your true north, which is that appropriate balance of whatever it is for you: head voice, chest voice, pharyngeal resonance. So that increase in the balance of chest voice is what we are hearing when we hear "say it with your chest." Now, that's literally what's happening. Now, let's look at figuratively what's happening when we hear "say it with your chest." It's way more emphatic. It's way more emphatic. Now, if we just broadly say, hey, let the emotions come through, well, that's going to get messy, especially because most people do not access or have awareness of or understand of, let alone control of, their emotions. And so being able to, say, be on stage and in an emotional state, you still have to have control when you are on stage or when you are performing, or really you have to have emotional control everywhere in order to not just be a either weepy or angry or whatever reactive mess wherever communication is being had. So this is where the 7th skill in the 7 skills of tonality comes into play, and this is stakes. So emotions is really, it's broad, it's unfocused, and it's a risky direction to give somebody. But if we look at what Kevin is demonstrating, or Kevin's story, I said Kevin. If we look at Kevin Hart's story and his example with his uncle, as his uncle, yes, is dropping into chest resonance, but he's raising the stakes when he's saying, say it with your chest. He's raising the stakes. Well, if we tell somebody to raise the stakes on what they're saying, that's going to contain likely more emotional access or them expressing a bit more but it doesn't do it in such a way as to make them overthink or make them ham it up a little bit or get super messy. So one of the ways that I like to think about this and explain this to people is the stakes could be, well, I normally have some coffee here, but let's say this Diet Coke, drink of champions, is coffee. Well, low stakes would be either this happens, either you get this or you don't, and if you don't, then my coffee gets cold, or my coffee is served to me cold or lukewarm. Pretty low stakes. That's kind of how most people interact in the world. They're just in a low stakes way, which definitely contributes to the endemic of low vocal energy. But that's a topic for another episode. Higher stakes, raising the stakes, then let's take a couple of big leaps, would be you, me, everyone that we love dies. Okay, that's pretty high. The highest of stakes is whether or not you believe in God and the afterlife or what have you. Just play along. You'll get the point. You, me, everybody that you love dies, and we're all going either to eternal damnation or eternal salvation. So when we hear Kevin, my old buddy Kevin. Well, I guess for a hot second I was friends with, or his boy The Rock knew exactly who I was. So I guess I am 1 degree of separation from Kevin Hart. That's kind of cool. So anyway, when my old buddy Kevin is telling this story, what we then can hear is his uncle is saying, hey, if you don't say it with your chest, it feels like I'm going to die and go to hell. It's that important to me that you express what you're trying to express with your chest. Which then really, if we look at this, it's just having a ton of conviction behind whatever it is that you're saying. So saying it with your chest means saying it with conviction. The literal mechanism of saying it with conviction is, more often than not, increasing the amount of chest resonance that you have in your sound, in the balance of sound that you normally carry. And then you're raising the stakes. And when you raise the stakes all the way to eternal damnation or eternal salvation, that is where you discover conviction. Because if you so deeply believe in something that you need to communicate it in such a way that everyone needs to know, or this action needs to happen, otherwise we're all going to hell, or we're going to live happily ever after in the great beyond. What kind of conviction is deeper than that? There is no deeper conviction than that. And that's all Kevin's Uncle Rich or Uncle Richie wants. He wants him to say, hey, man, I want you to tell me that you miss me and that you're excited to see me and that you're doing well and celebrate it. I want you to put some conviction behind it. Let me hear that let me hear all of these things. Let me feel you. Because there's no way, maybe not no way, but if you really want to give yourself the best odds of being felt, triggering an emotional response in somebody else, one of the key parts of that is that you have deep conviction in what you are saying. And when you have deep conviction in what you are saying, again, because the voice is magnificent and mysterious, but controlled by our mind and the human hardware and software, I suppose, makes decisions emotionally and then justifies later with logic. So the more deeply in tune that you can be with your emotions and then conviction behind those emotions and the points that you are making, the beliefs that you have, whatever you're trying to express, the more in touch with that you can be, the more your voice is going to express that automatically. So, yes, understanding, chest voice. Waking that up and becoming aware of that is really helpful. But if you are deeply, deeply convicted and able to just stay in that pocket, turn your brain off, and just express spontaneously, with deep conviction, you might find that your balance of chest voice dials up naturally, spontaneously. But then we want to be able to recreate that reliably and repeatedly in some situations where maybe it's not appropriate to express with that much intensity. Because ultimately, what we want to be able to do is to switch that on, switch that conviction on, switch this ability to communicate on, and use our voice with purpose, turn it into an asset, not a liability. And having that access, that controllable access within our command, and not as like, oh, I hope that happens when it happens, like a rise to the occasion. We don't want to rely on rising to the occasion with our voice. We want to fall to the level of our training. That's why it is important for us to wake this thing up and understand the full instrument and how to use it, even in a vacuum. And so then when we get into one of those situations, we'll have even more success and the voice will be even more beautiful and we won't blow it out and we'll be able to express fully, spontaneously, and authentically. So that's what's happening when you say it with your chest. So I've got some free resources. The one in particular that I'm thinking of that is going to help give some additional exercises, tips, thoughts around this skill, which is the first of the 7 skills, resonance, 7 tonality skills, is the free ebook, The Sound of Leadership. Yes, it is the same name as this podcast. That's available at links in my bio, everywhere that I am on the socials, at Michael Hewitt 23, and also in the show notes / description. There's a link to it. So go download that, check it out. It's really solid. Had a couple hundred people download it thus far since its inception. Let me know what you think. So go forth, love y'all, and speak boldly.